Good evening, everybody, and such a pleasure to have you all here and talking about human resources. So we started this. We've done multiple sessions around careers, and I think the reason it becomes all the more relevant to do this at this point of time in your careers is really because a lot of you here I can see would be in the first year of your you would have completed your first year of your post graduation, and this is really the time when some of you would be choosing what type of career you want to be in, or if you've already chosen or you've chosen human resources as your specialization. The question is, what do I look forward to? So I was talking to students in one of our Ask Me Anything sessions, and in one of the other sessions, and students said that for us sometimes human resources comes in after we eliminate a lot of other choices. But I think the way this function has shaped up, the way this function has taken a seat on the table, and is actually contributing to the way the organizations are shaping up, it's been immense. The impact has been immense. And through these sessions, we really want to kind of, you know, be with you and talk about what is that relevance one, and to really make it as your session. So the idea is not for us to come here and talk to you about what is human resources, what can you look forward to. Of course we would do that. Idea is also to know from you what are some of the queries that you have in your mind about your careers in HR. What are your aspirations like? And we have two guests who I'm going to introduce shortly. Ask them questions about their careers in HR, and how have they seen the whole shift in HR, and what's really coming up. So this session is really for you. Talk to us, keep chatting with us. The chat box is open, so keep sharing as much as you feel like sharing with us in terms of your aspirations, your hopes, and what exactly are you looking forward to. Quickly talking about our guests here. So we have Arun here with us. So Arun is a graduate from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and he's the HR director at Danaher Corporation based out of Singapore. He's managed multiple roles, and some of the progressive roles within the organization as far as the entire gamut of HR is concerned, right from leadership development to talent acquisition. And he's, if you see his credentials, he's worked across different geographies. So I'm sure today he's bringing in that perspective with him in terms of how HR has been impacting organizations across different geographies. So he'll be here with us answering all the questions that you have, and of course sharing his experiences in HR. We also have Dr. Anamika here. So Dr. Anamika is from Goa Institute of Management, and we're so glad to have her here, bringing in an academician's perspective. From the whole academic standpoint, how has she changed HR as a profession evolving? What kind of companies does she see coming onto campuses, and what are the trends like at the campuses? What is it that the companies are looking at in her experience, and how are those expectations really changing? So she brings in that perspective with her today. And finally, this is me. So I'm the co-founder of YUGMA and Van Skilling and Advisory. So been in the industry for about 17 years now, worked in different geographies, worked with different companies, and 3 years ago, we started this company. So, before I hand over to Arun and Anamika, I wanted to share with you some results. And this is one study which we did last summers with the help of some students who worked with us from TISS and Goa Institute of Management, and from Mumbai University. We spoke to about 100 plus CHROs and CXOs. Just give me a sec. I can't see the chat. Just give me like 2 minutes and I will answer if there's anything which is popping up on the chat option. So we spoke to 100 plus CHROs and CXOs, basically understanding what is their expectation out of HR. Uh, so to CXOs and the functional heads, we asked them, how do you view HR? What do you expect out of HR? How do you see HR partnering with you better in the way businesses are taking decisions? And to CHROs, we asked that how have you seen the role changing? What do you expect out of the business? So it's not just, business expecting out of HR, but also HR expecting out of the business. So what do you expect? What do you expect out of the students who you hire when you go onto the campuses? What do you really look for? And the good news is, the CXOs are saying that uh, we see HR as a partner. We've seen how HR as a function has evolved, and we see how HR as a function is actually participating with us in the way we're taking decisions, which possibly was not existing say 2 decades ago, but over the last 2 decades things have drastically changed. At the same time, about 55% of these CHROs and CXOs, and these were some of uh, the well-known, or the ones who are really the authority figures out there in their respective fields. They've kind of felt that a lot of times students get stuck only to the curriculum. So sometimes the curriculum does not prepare them for what's happening on the ground, what's happening in the business. Similarly, 80% of them felt that the basics need to be like really sharpened. Like, for example, a lot of us aspire to be in the strategy functions. A lot of us aspire to be in designing strategies around compensation. But do we really understand the basics of calculating compensations? What are the tax laws like? How do you make an offer letter? How do you actually negotiate on an offer? Things like those, making sense of the data, that kind of that actually kept coming up time and again, that okay, if you have an Excel sheet with all the employee data, can you find out what the stories are behind the data? Or every data has some story behind. Can you figure that out? uh, Almost 35% of them felt that during recruitments, they also kind of look at how well the students are able to have conversations and they can speak about the summer projects. So that kind of, gave us a cue that at the time of recruitments, summer projects is one of, or the project is one of the most critical talking point for a recruiter. They would want to know what kind of projects have you done, how have you done them, what were your learnings, how much depth have you acquired in those projects. And almost 90% of them felt that uh, so this was a specific question that we asked, that when you look at a certification and you see a certification on somebody's CV, what do you look for? And they said, while it's good to have a certification, but what we really want to know is how are students, or for that matter even experienced HR professionals, how are they able to practically apply it? How are they able to kind of see the relevance of what they have learned into the organizational context? And therefore, having experienced freshers is what they're looking at. So it's not about saying that okay, you need to know everything about HR, but what kind of experiences have you gathered in these 2 years, and therefore how are you ready to take those experiences out into the organizational setting? So those were some of the results that we saw, some of the things which we heard from the CHROs and some of the CXOs and functional heads and business heads when they spoke about their expectations, from the HR function and specifically from the students here. Okay, so with this, I would like to, first invite Dr. Anamika to speak about her experiences. How has she seen the face of HR changing? How, as an academician, somebody who's so connected with students and corporates alike, how has she seen the recruiting trends changing? Especially since the time COVID has come in, or even before that, what do you think, Dr. Anamika, has changed as far as the HR hiring is concerned, and therefore, the kind of careers that students are looking forward to.
Right. So during COVID and immediately during this last 1 year, the way I have understood the placement, given the colleges that I have just recently left in academics, 5 years is a recent leaving. So you keep in touch with the students who have joined in that college and at GIM. My understanding is that recruitment is being delayed, but it has not been stopped. Averages in terms of salary have come down. The typical loyal recruiters that we had, they have changed. The skill set demands have changed. Um, I think that in the recent, so typically 3 or 4 areas in which typically placements have happened in HR is one is consulting profiles. A lot of companies have taken on students for consulting profiles. The generalist definitely has continued. HR analytics has picked up in a very big way. I would say that almost 20 to 30% of our students have gotten profiles which are related to HR analytics. For once, freshers have been taken in well-being and psychological well-being roles, employee engagement and those kind of roles, which I think was for the first time that we saw. Um, uh, Primarily in terms of skill, there is a lot of focus on application, like you have yourself said. This year, what we felt was that people with experience, they found it more difficult to crack the interviews as compared to the freshers. We felt that in freshers, mostly recruiters were seeing that if they knew their basic concepts well and they were able to give some application, they were in. But when it came to people with 2 years, 4 years of experience, then they need to prove that they can actually apply or that they will be able to bring in value on job. That was a very major mandate that came in. We had more of small and entrepreneurial firms coming in rather than the large firms that we always banged on. So there was a major recruitment that happened in that field. The salaries were also higher in the smaller firms because otherwise one would typically feel that large companies can pay larger salaries. This year, the smaller firms have paid larger salaries. So I think in nutshell, that is how I would put it in terms of the trend that I have seen on placement this year. Summers, of course, there is a mixed response. Some people got the summers, then their offers were withdrawn. Some struggled for a very long time. But yes, this year there have been more unpaid summer internships than the paid internships. That's the shift in the trend. But the quality of projects have been good. So, in nutshell, in terms of trends, that's what I would like to put through.
Sure. So, guys, while we are chatting, feel free to ask questions. Like we said, this is your session completely. So, if anything pops up for you, just put it down on the chat box, and we'll keep answering those. Let's keep it as informal as we can. Right. So, Arun, over to you. And your perspective is more from, a recruiting manager's perspective. What kind of shifts have you seen, and what trends are you observing, and uh, what's your suggestion or advice to the students here?
Sure. No, first of all, thanks, Meenu and Dr. Srinivas and Dr. Anamika for having me here. It's a pleasure to speak to the students on Labor Day. I think if we didn't have labor, we would not have had HR. So congratulations to all of you who are budding HR professionals. I think this day is probably the most significant day in our life as HR professionals, because we are here to support the associates or the people who work to really create something, do something. And my heart goes out to everybody who's in the front line today supporting the COVID war in India. So on that note, Meenu, I think to your question specifically, the world has changed. Like in 2019, when we were doing our strat planning, we had a certain set of roles based on a certain set of assumptions. But come 2020, starting in China and then spreading to the world, I think the whole COVID pandemic impacted us in a very unprecedented manner. Some countries experienced a peak earlier, some others did later, but the economy was certainly, in a very bad shape. If you look at the US stock markets in March last year, there was a crash. Obviously, they had many stimulus packages. There's a lot more currency in the market today, which is why probably the market is still doing well. But if you look at the implications from a work perspective, you will see that unemployment rates have gone up. If you go to LinkedIn and see that green badge around the photos of people, you'll see that a lot more people are having the green badge now as compared to the past. So the first trend that I'm seeing as an employer is the supply has increased. While one would have conventionally thought that in times like these, people would be less prone to change jobs. Actually, people are more open now to change jobs because they want to shift from companies which they feel, are not really going to take care of them to companies that take care of them. It's not about being a MNC company or a small company. All companies can take care of people. Today morning, I was looking at a post from Borosil where four of their colleagues actually lost their life, and Borosil went ahead and committed 2 years of salary to their family members, along with sponsoring education for the people that for the family members of the associates that lost their life. Now, that's why I say that the first trend that I'm seeing is employees or potential employees are making a lot more conscious choice now in terms of getting into the workplace. While there is some desperation for a small percentage of people to get a job, but the ones who are already placed, who are already in the market, are making a very conscious choice to say, I want to work for a company that took care of their people versus working for a company that let people go. And Tata's is probably an example that shines out. Be it the example of Vistara helping to fly people across the country, doctors and frontliners, or be it the case of Click, which is an online portal where they said, look, our deliveries can be a day late, we don't mind, but our people, now is the time to heal, we need to take care of people. So that's the first trend. Second trend, when I look inside out, there's a lot more pressure on justifying each headcount now because top line margins have not grown as it was expected to grow last year. So what happens is as the flow through happens on your P&L, there's a lot of pressure on the SG&A expenses. So every headcount is now scrutinized a lot more, no matter which business you're a part of. So to what Dr. Anamika said, some companies had to renegade their internship, promises. Some others are going into non-paid internships now. I think it's a function of uh, the financial challenge that many companies are facing. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like this trend will change very quickly. So we need to be pragmatic and really make sure that we are adding enough value. I love the term that you used earlier, Minu, experienced freshers. That's how we should really be able to bring ourselves into the market where we are able to offer something that nobody else is offering. And that could be a USP that helps propel you and your candidature into the employment market. So first trend is, companies that take care of people, companies that don't take care of people, employees or potential employees making a choice. Number two is the whole trend around, more pressure on each headcount. So incremental value while coming at the same price. The third trend that I'm seeing is this whole divide between digital and real. So in the past, a HR person's job was on the shop floor or a HR person's job was in an office. But for the last 1 year plus now, I've been operating from home. That was never taught in a B school that how can you operate from home as a HR person. But 2020 probably taught that lesson to everybody. We were taught about going, having discussions, resolving conflict, being on the gemba, and really making sure that we're able to create impact. Some people were funnily calling HR as menu and venue kind of function, where you decide the menu for a party and venue for a party, but nothing beyond that. But 2020 has actually shown that HR has a very, very important role to play. Like if you look at associates today and the way they value companies, HR and what HR did in 2020 has had a huge influence in that perception. And I think that's really redefined the place of HR as well. Today, no decision in the country, I'm not talking about India alone, but in any other country, when COVID hit, any meeting that the business would do, the HR person's presence was absolutely a must. Because the first thing that people were asking, even business leaders, is how do we take care of our people? What do we do to ensure that nobody is left behind? So HR's role has really gained prominence, and the virtual world is now, a reality for all of us. So as HR professionals, some of the shifts that we need to be aware of is how do you operate virtually? How do you build more empathy or emotional intelligence to really connect to people in an unconnected or in a distant world? How do you use data? Like today, we don't have access to people. Otherwise, you have a water cooler conversation. You can make out there's an attrition risk with someone. Today, it's just a inanimate phone call or a call without video where you are probably interacting with people. So HR, the need for wisdom, the need for really the ability to see what is not shown and hear what is not told is probably the third thing that I would say HR professionals need to really bring to the table. So when I as a recruiter go into the industry and look for people, these are some of the thoughts that play in my mind while I make that decision. I hope that gives you a, a starting for this conversation, Meenu.
Absolutely. So, yeah, that's a good starting point, Arun and Dr. Anamika. And as I'm reading some questions coming up on the chat, I guess, one thing which has come up is, what kind of HR skills do we need to have as this community of students? So if you were to advise them, so they'll also have placements coming up in next 7 to 8 months. So if you were to tell them how do you get prepared for the placements and what kind of skills do you need to acquire in next 6 7 months, what would those skills be? And this question is to both of you. So maybe Arun is unmuted, so he can start for us.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I would love to go in first. So I think for the participants on the call, the first thing is the core HR skills still need to be there. So whatever is your theory, good academics always makes for good practice. So if you are not able to go to campus this year, you are missing out on some of those interaction opportunities that you would have had otherwise, in a live format. Please compensate for that by making books your friends. Please compensate for that by watching videos, participating in forums like this, and making sure that you are really getting in as much you can into your toolkit as a HR professional. So first is academics is certainly important. Number two, and kind of a little contrary to what I said, number one, in theory, there's no difference between theory and practice, but in practice there is. And for you as professionals, it's very critical that you need to understand what's the reality on the ground. You cannot just take theory and package it, in a nice PPT and say, hey, here is the solution. You need to understand the smell of the sweat on the ground of that laborer or that worker who's facing a challenge today. In India, all our HR teams today across Danaher, the single point focus for our team members is to ensure safety of our colleagues. I think we were talking to Dr. Srinivas earlier, and he said 20% of residents in most RWAs are probably impacted by COVID today. That same percentage holds true for associates as well in companies, because it's the same group, right? Whether they're clubbed in a housing society or clubbed in a company, it's that same representative population. 15 to 20% of our colleagues today are impacted by COVID, and we don't know how to take care of them because they're not getting oxygen. Some places they're not getting beds. Multiple challenges. So HR's ability to empathize, be resourceful, and provide that support in these times is extremely critical, because these are associates who are stressed. They don't know what to go, where to go. Never seen a situation like this in the past. How do you build your character? How do you build your personality to be able to be that beacon of light amidst all this, despair and challenges around us? Is also an important skill that I am looking at when I look at HR professionals, because business leaders obviously need to display that grit, but not everybody else in the function or business can do that. So I think many leaders are calling upon HR to play that role of being that emotional strong point, the tallest pillar, if I can say, in that tent, to keep that that sanity in the organization on. And number three, I would say personally that there's a lot of emphasis now on data. In the past, you could probably say something and get away with it, but today the world believes in the maxim, in God we trust, for everything else we need data. How quickly you can become data fluent, how quickly you can use data to build a strong case. And not just in HR, like you can give HR theory really well, but do you understand the finance metrics? Whenever a business leader is today looking at a decision from you, he or she is expecting you as a HR partner to know the business well and take care of your people. It's not taking care of people alone. You have to be completely fluent in both these aspects. So the three things that I would say to young HR professionals is that look for, look for good academics first, ground yourself in good theory. That's the starting point. Second, keep your ears in the ground. Like I said earlier, see what is not shown, hear what is not told. And three, use data. I think data is going to really come to your rescue whenever you have debates. It's not the volume or the way you speak, but it's the quality of your argument that helps you wins debate. And the person who wins debate is able to further the agenda, is the person who's able to accelerate his or her career as well. So these are top three things that I would probably offer to that question, Meenu.
Thank you so much. So this is so interesting. So just yesterday, I was having a coaching conversation with somebody who was a compensation director, and this was a conversation in triad. So her manager was also in the conversation, who was the HR head. And the manager actually had a suggestion to make, that next time when you make your compensation strategy, look at the gross margin of the business. Look at how is the business doing, what are the margins like, and then decide what kind of increments you want to propose and what kind of incentives you want to propose. And I thought that was such a beautiful correlation to what you just said, that so many times as HR professionals we have to go back to the business matrices to say, how is the business doing, and therefore how will it impact some of the decisions that we need to take as HR professionals for people, for people in the organization. So thank you for bringing that up.
Just to add a little, sure. I think besides the 5 C's that we traditionally taught to the students in terms of credibility, competence, compassion, character, and communication. Just adding a level of abstraction to what Arun says, and then therefore building a little perspective. The way forward, probably the gig economy is going to go much deeper. And with that, the mindsets will need to change. The predictability that we are so used to, that will have to shift to being open to possibility. And therefore, the growth mindset and learning agility is a skill that HR professionals will have to build in themselves. So solution centricity will be very important, because whether we like it or not, the anxious, incomprehensible world that we are part of today, that's only going to become even more dynamic as we go along. So therefore, a lot of things in terms of political savviness, I think that will emerge as a very strong. So communication will include a level of political savviness, having the capability to withhold, so that will become a very important skill set in times to come. And when your employees are trying to build everything, whether it's your physical space, your social ecosystem, whether it's remote work or whether it's gig work, in both these situations, there's a lot of skeleton system that the HR professionals will have to build and weave in for them. So skills towards that will have to be built up. So adaptability, because I don't think anybody, the kind of everyday change that HR professionals in the last year would have undergone, from taking decisions of enabling technology for remote work to giving them equipment so that work from home can be enabled. So adaptability and not knowing what can come up tomorrow, and be on their feet continuously with a solution mindset and not losing the focus of compassion. That will probably be something that I would think that would be very important in times to come.
Any there are a couple of questions that I would go to, but before that, any practical tips in terms of how should this, and of course, not saying that these tips were not practical, but say if the students have to do a to-do list to say that, okay, next 9 months, these are the 3 or 4 things that we should definitely do to be able to build a very strong persona as far as the placements are concerned. So any tips from the placement standpoint?
So shall I go? I may have limited. Arun, of course, will have larger bandwidth on that. So According to me, any of these HR analytics course, whether it's LinkedIn courses or whether it's Coursera courses, that's something that I see as a major trend in students. The other is the SHRM certification and CIPD certification. That is another thing that I have seen a lot of acceptance in the recruiters for these courses. And the content is very practical. The facilitation is very well done. So I would definitely recommend them. But Arun, of course, has a larger bandwidth on that.
Sorry, I was still speaking on mute, but I think Dr. Anamika, you said it really well. What's happening now is, and I use the analogy of a remote control for a TV. When I was a child, we used to see TV, and the first time the remote control came in, everybody was excited. They said, "Hey, wow, the selling point for a TV is a remote control." So the differentiation became a TV with remote, a TV without remote, and very soon a remote control became a standard, option. Today, nobody even speaks about a remote control. It's a given. So I think from education perspective as well, that's been the trend. When my grandfather graduated, if he finished graduation, it was a big thing in the community. When my dad graduated, probably, a master's was a in thing. Today, when I'm graduating, or when you will graduate, there will be an era of super specialization. You will have to continue learning all the time. You cannot rest on the laurels that you've created in the past by just completing a degree. So ongoing education is certainly something that's what I would encourage, number one. And I think Dhanishta also mentioned this here, Anamika ma'am also mentioned, it's very important for us to look for content that adds value. I'm not saying that everything that adds value is always paid for. Sometimes you can get it free as well. So you need to be discreet. Some of the things that I do in person, personally, because Meenu asked a very specific question that, hey, what can our students do? 2, 3 action points. So I'll give you two thoughts here. One is every year I find a mentor who's probably 5, 10 years ahead of me in the industry, and somebody who's done a lot more impactful work, somebody whom I want to be like. So I've got some very solid mentors. In fact, some I shared with Meenu as well. Professor Vijayan sir from Wellinger is one of them. There are many others, that I have. But really use these mentors to add value to you. Have a monthly call with them, go with an agenda, ask specific questions, and use these mentors to really chisel off those, sharp edges that you have as a professional. So finding a mentor every year is something that I would recommend. I always have 3 mentors every year. One is a mentor that I take on the spiritual path. I follow, a particular religion, and I have a mentor who helps me in understanding the Bhagavad Gita. The second is a mentor who I take in the business side. I want to really understand what the business world is doing. How can I sharpen my skills there? And third is my mentor on the HR side. So these 3 mentors help me a lot to keep that balance going. Maybe you want to start with one, and then as you keep getting better at this, you might want to cultivate at least 1 or 2 mentors more to really build capabilities in the areas that you're looking for. That's number one. Number two, I think today is a world where you can really benefit from participative learning. In the past, you had to go to a book, and there was only one way that you could add value. But I participate in a lot of conversations like these, and while you think I'm here to give you something, I'm getting equal or more in return. I'm hearing perspectives from Dr. Namika. I'm hearing perspectives from Meenu. As a preparation to this, I'm doing some reading. All that is helping me. So how do you participate in learning? How do you co-create a community of practice? I'm part of many WhatsApp groups. There's HR Shapers, HRFI, LinkedIn. I just go to these groups, keep looking at what the trends are. I'm not spending hours and hours, because unfortunately nobody has a luxury of time these days. But how do you be very intentional? How to be very deliberate in picking up what is relevant, like that Rajahansa. You can separate milk and water and take what is relevant. So you need to really be very, very focused in being part of these communities. You have to give as well to get. It can't be a one-way street where you just keep taking all the time, not giving back. But being in these communities, helping further that cause, is also a great learning experience. The third thing, if I can add, I was thinking of two, but the third one is also participating in forums like, say, NHRDN or SHRM. Take up voluntary projects. In a seminar like this, you become the person who's just taking the key tips and posting it on LinkedIn. If you are creating value and helping others, very soon that value and that good karma will come back to you. So these are 3 things that I could possibly think of. Find good mentors, be immerse yourself into participative learning, and be givers. Like, give more than you get, or give more than you take, and you will get more than what you give. So those are three thoughts that I could possibly give to that question.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Arun and Dr. Anamika. This actually, I hope, the students have been able to pick up those key points that will help them decide how should they how should they plan their next 6-7 months leading up to the placements. So there's a question. Isha wants to know, how do we participate in SHRM, NHRD, and CIPD? So just go on to their websites. You could either become a member, or they have a lot of free resources which are available under their resources tab. So you could keep referring to those resources. There are a lot of research papers. ATD is another site. So go on to their website. You would have everything available out there, and most of your questions uh, should get resolved once you visit the website, Isha. Right. So, because some of you had questions about, what is a business partner, and what are the different roles within HR that one could do. I'll take a dig. Of course, Arun has posted, a link as well, the HPR link as well. But I'll get into the basics of it. And of course, we have two veterans, so please do add in, and keep talking about what else are you seeing happening around. In like I said, this is a very basic HR structure. So it's a stool model. So you have the three pillars. Those are very strong pillars of HR. So you have specialists, you have business partners, and you have the shared services. Now let me take an example of a conglomerate. And let me just give you an example how it works. So let me take example of the Piramal Group, where I spent half of my career. Now, say Piramal Group has multiple companies within their sphere. So they would have business partners for each of the companies. So, what business partners would do is they would actually work across all facets of the employee life cycle. So, right from hiring to the time when the employee is parting ways with the company. So, they would actually be doing the entire life cycle. So, which means working with the leaders to understand, what could the recruiting needs be, working with them to actually say, how should we develop the culture of the organization, how should we evaluate performance, how should we reward people in that particular in that particular business only. Now there are certain specialists which are sitting at the group level. Now these specialists are not doing everything, they are just doing one particular function, but they are going deeper into that function. They are supporting each and every business of the group. So, for example, if somebody say is in charge of performance management, or say let's say compensation and benefits, now that person's role is to figure out, okay, in different industries, and I'm just taking examples, in different industries, what are the typical compensation parameters which are being measured, or what are the typical benchmarks, like what are how is the increment scene looking like this year. So Piramal may have a real estate division, a pharma division, a manufacturing division. In each of these businesses, what are the increments like, and therefore they would go and propose it to the management and say that this is what you should budget for this year as far as the increments are concerned. Or say, for example, if we're talking about HR technology and data analytics, there's somebody sitting out there who's looking at the entire organizational data to say that, okay, where do we have people, how is the performance like, if we were to lose people, where are we losing people to, where are we attracting people from. So there is this one specialist who's only looking at people related data. who's only looking at, what are those numbers really talking, what are those numbers really saying. So these are the specialists who are supporting the entire group as far as that one vertical is concerned. The business partners, they actually work with the business and they support them throughout the entire life cycle. And then there is this shared services. Now, shared services is an interesting concept. So what happens is, lot of these conglomerates would typically have one unit which would actually say that, okay, you are a business partner, do what you are supposed to do, which is partner with the business. If you have anything routine or anything transactional, give it to us, we will manage that. Now, what could that transactional activity be? Suppose you want to start a group insurance policy. They would say, okay, let me take care of that. Or say, for example, you have to plan an induction, a basic induction program for all new joinees. So this group will say, let me take care of that. Or say, for example, you want to arrange for a learning program. So this group will say, okay, let me take up all the logistics part of it. Now, is it transactional? Yes, it is transactional. Is it adding value? Yes, it is adding value, because when somebody is kind of saying that, okay, let me manage logistics of all the companies together, sometimes, what happens is they get you a better deal. They get you better commercials. They're able to kind of manage processes efficiently because that is their role, to manage that process. Whereas the business partner or a specialist is only working on saying, okay, how do I design a learning program which will help my leadership team or help my managers do better in their work, or actually be productive. So these are the three large roles that HR would have. Now, within these roles, again, we would have, like, compensation and benefits would, so, there will be certain skills which will be required. Talent acquisitions, there will be certain skills that will be required. But when you look at the structure, these are the three ones which typically most organizations would have. The newer element which is coming in and which is actually cutting across each of these three functions is the whole culture part of it. Of course, the culture and change is part of a specialist role, but we've seen in last 2 years, this has actually become everybody's role. It's not just, HR's role to influence culture and to influence change, but every leader is required to do that. And therefore, actually orienting leaders to say that, okay, when crisis happens, how do you actually manage your teams? How do you ensure that, their mental well-being is taken care of, their physical well-being is taken care of, they are okay, and at the same time, you're able to work well together. So I think those little things which we spoke about a while ago, but that's becoming a huge part of HR's portfolio here, in terms of getting people to think culture, getting people to think that what is the DNA of the organization that we really want to build and define really. Yes.
If
So
I can say, Meenu, if
yes,
I can just add a quick 30 seconds
absolutely.
there. I always thought stool model was something that I had as a proprietary, but when you called it out today and explained it so beautifully, I feel that, hey, this is something common knowledge, but lovely example and very well explained. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Arjun. I'm just reading some comments. I'm in first year student. I want to know how HR is useful in academics career, because everyone says that for academic career, finances. I want to become a professor. So Dr. Anamika, here is a question for you. Kiran has a question. She wants to become, she or he, I'm not sure, because
It's really a surprise that somebody wants to look at a career in professorship in HR. So if I have to map the journey, in fact, Entrepreneurial Development Institute has already announced its PhD program. To become a professor, you need to have a bare minimum master's qualification and then a PhD. These days, if you want to be in any of these top 50 NIRF colleges, then you must have at least one or two good publication, and there are listings which are available. And you have to look at the list that the college honors and accordingly publish in that. and preferably a paper which has a practice orientation. So, if an industry personnel is looking at that paper, they must be able to see value of the work that you've done. So if that's something that interests you, it's definitely the way forward. But let me at this stage also warn you a little, because now with online education coming in, and the trends towards continuous and micro customized learning options that are coming in, I think the core MBA teaching is going to take a very different shift. There are going to be 3, 4 kinds of business models in MBA education which are likely to come up. And there is going to be a major transition that is going to come in there. For example, what we feel is that there will be some like extremely high posh campuses with complete robotics enabled sanitization machines and this and that, 5-star, 7-star facilities. And there the faculty primarily will be people who have really done some seminal contributory work. For example, if you look at Adam Grants and people like that, that would be one model. The other would be hybrid, where you have webinars and other methods of learning, and then you come for just a week or 10 days in a month, or at the end of the year, 3 months. So accordingly, then the skill sets will have to change, because teaching on a digital forum and teaching face to face, that there is a tremendous amount of difference in terms of skill, course design, uh, engaging with the audience, tech savviness. So depending on how in another 2 years the market shapes up, you will have to accordingly upgrade yourself on skill sets there. But a PhD and some good publication is definitely a must, because these days without PhD, nobody will take you in. Not even the smaller colleges will take you in. I hope that satisfies. So I'm not trying to discourage, but what I'm saying is that this is a profession that's going in a major disruption in times to come. So we'll have to wait and watch a little.
There's another question. So do we have an option to take other minor subject in addition to HR? Could you please suggest business analyst? I'm assuming business analysis, operations, finance, etc. So my take, of course, I would also request Dr. Namika and Arun to pitch in. I think, you should enjoy what you are doing. So it's not about saying what is, a lot of students, young ones actually, they keep calling up and asking like, ma'am, what's in fashion these days? And, what should I do? Like, I want to get a good job. What should I do? And then I keep giving them this example of, my neighbor who's doing her BA in Shastriya Sangeet. And I'm like, if I go and ask her that, Shastriya Sangeet fashion mein hai kya abhi? And, is it, she might say that, no, this is what I'm passionate about, this is what I love doing and therefore I'm doing it. It's not about, what's in fad. I know where I want to be with classical music. And that's what I keep telling everybody. See, what are you passionate about? So a lot of people also in HR, when they come up, they say that we're passionate about human resources. We're passionate about the unlimited possibilities that can exist with people around, and we want to explore those. Look at what's your passion. You will find a way out, be it operations, be it finance, and mind you, everything is important. It's not like, if I am HR plus operations, that's it. You need to know finance as well. You need to know analysis as well. You need to know marketing as well. Only then you will be able to kind of partner with these functions, and you will be able to have conversations, and you will understand how are they contributing to the business. But if it comes to taking one minor subject, look at where would you want to dig deeper into. So for next 1 year, if you were to dig deeper into one subject passionately, what would you love digging deeper into?
Yeah, just adding on to what you've said, more often than not, in at least tier 2 colleges, students who choose HR typically are the ones who say that, ma'am, finance I can't crack, ops, maths is too tough. So I'm looking at HR and marketing. And we always tell them this, that, if you choose HR or your minors also in alignment with that, then you will never be the best in the career that you are choosing. You may reach mid-level, but being the best, or even being able to enjoy 25, 30 years of your life, that may not happen to you. And that Japanese ikigai concept, I think, is very relevant. If you are So the story is that in Japan there is a village where people pursue their purpose and passion, and therefore the longevity, health, everything is much better. So, and if you look at the seminal etymology of the word career, it comes from the course or the chariot. So, if it's a course of 25 years, or the runway that you will be on for 25 years, it must be something that you are passionate about. Um, Having said that, going forward, if you are choosing HR, then knowing finance, multidisciplinary approach. In fact, it's not just that you should be good with psychology, or you should be good with technology or IT systems or whatever. You'll have to be multidisciplinary. You can't say that I want to be in HR, but finance, please don't ask me anything. Uh, or you can't say that, marketing, or please keep me out of it. You will have to integrate all the concepts, strategy in very big way. You should be able to see the strategy and environment, and therefore proactively build solutions for your organizations internally. Again, strategy is something students typically don't connect the dots. Strategy, that's a different subject. We did it in the third term. Now we are done with it. It doesn't work that way. I don't know. What's Arun's thought on this? Arun, what do you feel? Should they follow strategy or not?
No, absolutely. I agree with both of you. Maybe I'll start with Minu's comments. I was reminded of this, very famous video by Steve Jobs, "Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish," where he explained how he used to sit in calligraphy classes back in Stanford before he dropped out, and how that learning helped him to design fonts for Apple. And he went on to say that, look, keep learning whatever you can, because there's so much to learn. So whatever you like learning is what you should go for. Never be shy of learning something new. So in response to the question of what specialization to choose, I would say that, go for what you love or what you like doing, and keep building strengths on that. To what Dr. Anamika also said, finance is very, very critical. Understanding of numbers is very important. If you want to be doing good strategy is based on good data, because strategy is nothing but charting the course, again, like what Dr. Anamika said, of where you want to go and how do you get there. It's about making choices. It's about saying what will you do to take you from point A to point B, and then articulating that, with various scenarios, various constraints, possibilities, and then making sense of it all. That's strategy, as I understand it. So really, if I ask you, I would say that, try to do all these specializations if possible, but if not, pick the one that you're most uncomfortable with, because the others you might still be able to get away, with whatever little that you can, but the one that you're most uncomfortable with might become your Achilles heels in the future. So if you ask me for what you want to choose, take the one that you're probably most uncomfortable with. One of my senior leaders at GE, when I used to work there, Ravichandran Soundrapandian, always say that whenever you get roles, Arun, or whenever you make any decision in life, pick the one that's more difficult, because that increases your threshold level, and that helps you elevate your game. So that's just some thought that I would offer in response to the question, in addition to what both Meenu and Dr. Anamika said so wonderfully.
Wow, thank you so much, Arun, and Dr. Anamika. So I think there's also this notion that what you do in your 2 years of MBA is like cast in the stone. So you can't do anything beyond that. I think we all need to get out of that mindset as well. Uh, because, say, for example, you're choosing HR, and you have 30, 40 years of work still to do. What if after 20 years you say that, no, I don't want to do HR, I want to do something else, right? I want to start a company and I want to do everything that happens in a company. Then at that point of time, there could be something else which will be of help to you. There could be something else altogether that you may have to do. So I think is our brain really tuned to that fact that okay, we need to keep learning. So these 2 years is meant to help you learn, is meant to help you build perspective, and not kind of fix your mindset to say this is what I'm going to do. You never know, after 20 years you might say okay, I am done with it, I can't do this anymore, I want to do something else altogether. So treat this as a time to learn, pick up as much as you can. So I actually 4 5 years ago, I actually recruited somebody at Pyramid. The reason I recruited that person was, he said, I have chosen HR, but all my projects are in finance and marketing, uh, and in sales. He actually did door to door selling as well. So when I asked him, why did you do that? It's such an uncool job. I was just triggering. I was just trying to see what is coming up. I said, you could have actually sat in a nice cabin and you could have done that work. Why did you do this? And he said that, it helped me understand the pulse of the company. It helped me understand how is this company making money, and how is this, what kind of challenges people are facing when they are actually representing company on the shop floor or on the ground or on the field. And that's a perspective which this person built in. So while he was clear he wants to be in HR, but 2 years he did that role as well. So please use this opportunity to actually learn as much as you can, and not really be fixated कि यही है life and this is what I want to do forever. Yeah. Okay. Apologies for the background noise, if at all you can hear it. It's the cooking time at home. So yeah. So so there's a question that where can we look for internships in HR roles or as a fresher student? Okay. Uh, so see, LinkedIn doesn't mean that it's a one-way communication. Somebody is putting up a position and you are responding to it. uh, Reach out to people, build your community, build your network, reach out to people, and let them know that you are ready to work. You are ready, these are the skills that you bring in, and this is how you would want to contribute to that company. So I see that working so many times. People write to us, and it's like in a startup, you always need somebody to work with you. There's always so much of work available. And I can speak about startups at this stage. So figure out, which are the kind of companies you would want to work, and proactively reach out to them, let them know these are the skills that you have. This is how you could contribute. And I'm sure there'll be many people who will be happy to work with you. And especially in these times, as Arun was mentioning a while ago, there's always that freeze on the headcount. You can't hire people, and therefore, when you reach out to people and say that, okay, you don't need to hire me, I'm coming in as an intern, pay me a stipend. Or a lot of students also say, okay, I just need experience. I don't need stipend, but I just need to work on some projects. I think people would love to have you working with them if you go with that attitude that this is what I have to share with you. This is what I have to contribute to you. So reach out to people, build your network. Yes. So do we have? Okay. So, Arun, I have one question for you. So, a lot of times we keep thinking that now COVID is like has actually disrupted us. So, in times like these, what is the role of HR like? And I'm not saying time like the COVID time per se, but dealing with this change, dealing with the fact that this is an unprecedented situation. How can how can HR build the systems in the organization, and therefore what role do we have to play as HR professionals to ensure that the business continuity is maintained, people are taken care of, the well-being is taken care of?
Sure. So thanks, Minu. And I think these are unprecedented times when HR has to play many roles, like in in peacetime, HR can do the role what HR is supposed to do. But in war times or crisis like this, HR has to do much more. So a couple of things that I can think of in response to your question. One is the ERT team. One person can't do it alone. So if HR is able to really bring the leadership, bring critical people together and put a war room kind of a thing where they start looking at how to respond to this situation. So what we have done is facilitated that process. So what happens is the process becomes a lot more effective and we are able to manage whatever comes our way, because 10 minds certainly can think better than one. So that's the first thing I would encourage HR professionals to think about in terms of how do you really make sure that you're getting a ERT team together, you're putting a playbook in terms of business continuity, what are the different functions, all functions, plan for scenario A, scenario B, scenario C. When we went into lockdown last year in Singapore, the whole team actually put 5 scenarios to say if 20% people get impacted, what happens? 40% people get impacted, what happens? Because we were in the water business. And if our service engineers don't go and service a water plant, then citizens don't get to drink water, which is an even more bigger calamity. Or hospitals don't get water to kind of treat their patients or support them. So that's the kind of thinking that you need to have where you expand your skills, go outside your comfort zone. So I think building teams that can respond is number one. From an organization perspective, Meenu, I think HR has to be that person who helps leaders to take that pause and look 100 days and 1,000 days and maybe 10,000 days as well. Because in crisis like this, it is very easy for us to get very focused on the here and now without really thinking about the future. So HR has to play that critical role. And you are a coach, Meenu. I'm sure you do this a lot more often. But asking people to stop, pause, and reflect. What is it that's going to help you win the battle in the next 100 days? And what is it that's going to win the battle in the next 1,000 days? Because both are going to be different. If we don't keep refocusing the lens, it's going to probably leave you better off in a certain area, but not in the other. So that's the second thing that HR can do. Third is from a process standpoint, HR can also become a role model or a expert in putting processes. Like when COVID happened, the first thing that we did is we developed a toolkit to say that if you're facing these symptoms, here is what you do. If you're in this country, here are the touch points. Here is how you can operationalize it. A lot of times putting in standard work or creating processes is where a lot of value comes for the business. You can respond to a crisis by making some calls, doing things ad hoc, but how do you standardize that? How do you build processes? That process muscle is something that's critical as well. So ERT is like the 3 points I mentioned is what I would have to offer to that question.
Thank you so much. And in fact, a new question has come up. So, Dr. Anamika, would you like to take that? So, jobs for HR and government sector. What kind of jobs do you see coming in from the government sector?
So, in fact, COVID, I would be able to speak more on the learning and development and the experiments that the government sector did on learning and development. And for a change, while we have this impression that government is non-responsive and they may be slower and HR may be still administrative in nature, what we realized was that at least many of these government bodies were taking a very proactive HR and at par with the private bodies that they were doing. So only thing is recruitment processes is through employment ads and other things, whereas in private it's a little smoother to get into an HR job. So in terms of change in vacancy profile, that I have not observed, but those who are already in the job, I feel that the amount of applications towards all those topics that we've so far been talking in terms of using more technology, getting more compassionate, reaching out, allowing people to look at different options. I think all of that I have seen happening. Similarly, on learning and development, I was almost sure that all these training centers that we have, whether it's your banking training centers or whether it's other departmental training centers, they would remain the same. There would be no change. But I was quite surprised to see that their shift to digital platform was quite smooth and quite fast. I think within 3 months, some of the case studies that I was building, they had already shifted to digital platform. Of course, private probably was already in the process of being and going digital, so their transitions were even faster. But even the corporates were taking much better and much faster. So that's my understanding. But in terms of recent vacancies coming in, which are of a very different profile, that I have not seen. That's my answer. I don't know. I'm not
In
sure.
fact, I think the whole outlook towards HR as far as the government sector is concerned is also in a way becoming a little more sophisticated. And I keep seeing so many government organizations these days appearing as part of Great Place to Work, or you know, some of these reputed cultural awards. They're part of those awards as well. Now, I think the intention is, right there. It's the fact that there's so much happening, and they're talking about it in these forums. So I think in a way those roles are also shaping up in line with what the private organizations would typically design.
So Konkan Railways is our client, and so are some other institutes like GPARD and all. So, like you said, the bureaucracy is so high that they want to do a lot of things, and if you have a smart IAS officer somewhere, they really want to bring about a lot of change. But with bureaucracy, that process is a little slower. Getting into it is all government jobs are advertised on the employment forums. You need to be on the watch out on these employment forums. Look at whenever there is a vacancy that's announced, apply. They have their fixed formats in which you have to apply. There is a lot of documentary evidence that you have to scan and upload. It's a long, I think any government job takes about 1.5 day full to just scan all the documents and upload it. So documentary evidences go along with the biodata. And then there is a shortlisting process. They have these quotas and other this thing in which CVs are segregated. And then if you are found to be eligible, then you get an interview or whatever is there. If there is a written examination, then you'll have to take the written examination. So if you meet the criteria, you will be invited for that. So that would be the process. You will have to see. So there are three, four. One way is to do UPSC exams or the state level exams and then get into government jobs. Or the other is you watch out for these organizations in specific. For example, Konkan Railways advertises its own independent job vacancy. So you can be on a watch whenever they apply advertise. Then you have to apply through their portals.
So I think there was this one question which somebody had posted on how does the career progress in HR. So see, the career progression, and I'm using this model as the base. The career progression could typically happen in these three verticals. Having said that, one could actually move between the verticals as well. So from specialist, one could become a business partner, and similarly, a business partner could also become a specialist. And even one could also go into shared services, especially when there is a large scale transformation happening and you want to put systems in place. You want to design SOPs, standard operating processes around in a large organization. Shared services know-how actually comes in quite handy. So you can move around these areas. Um, SHRM has a beautiful competency guide. So which really talks about what should you be doing. So they have. I'm just using one example here, but you could always go up to their website and see. So as per their module, and which is what most organizations would also do. So there are three levels. The performers, the translators, and the strategists. As much as we would want to become a strategist early on in the career, I think we all have been through the journey. It starts with being a performer. So you have to really get a grip on those little nuances of the business before you actually start becoming a translator, and then you start become a strategist. Now, what does this strategist do? So strategist or an architect is somebody who designs the overall strategy. So say in learning and development, what are the business needs? What is it that the business is aspiring for? And therefore, what is it that our leaders need to lead? leaders need to learn, or what is it, say, how much investments would we need this year, say for example, to make our learning plan a reality, and influencing people to influencing the leadership team or the management or the owners to say that what, this year you should invest, and this is the return on investment, or these are some of the shifts that you would see in your business when you are actually uh, investing in your leadership development. The translator is somebody who would say that, okay, now I have the budget, now I know the big priorities. How do I convert some of these priorities into actionables, into saying that, okay, if leadership development is the agenda, what within leadership development is the agenda? Which groups need which type of inputs? How are those inputs relevant to the business? So the translators would actually do that. And the performers would say that, okay, now let me execute this. Let me kind of, look at the data, pick up data from everywhere to say how many people do we have, which person needs to have what kind of a learning plan. If a person has a learning plan, how do we work with their managers in putting together that learning plan and actually executing and actually measuring the effectiveness of that? So typically what happens is you start by being a performer, you get the grip of, what are the nuances like, and then you move up. So Arun has shared that competency model, which you could look at. Now the idea behind sharing this is for you to know that, okay, if you're starting at a performer level, be it learning and development, be it compensation, be it a business partner, be it in recruitment. And I'll come to that point in a minute about recruitments, but whatever it is, understand that there are certain competencies defined for a performer. So can you pick up those competencies in next 6 to 8 months? And see where is it that you need to work upon. Managing data is coming out again and again. So if you go through these competencies, you will see data coming out. So what can you do to build your data capabilities? Um, Recruitments, a lot of us feel, it's such an uncool job. People say, I don't want to work on recruitments, but understand the influence. Like, you're bringing in people in the organization. So are you bringing in the right people? And there is so much of science which goes behind it. The decisions you take are going to impact the culture in terms of, the strategy, etc., the way people work in the team. So you have such an important role to play when you are a part of the recruitment team. So my limited advice here is don't shy away from those roles if they come in. There's so much you could do to standardize the processes, to make them robust so that you're getting all the right people in, and it has such a big influence on the organization. So recruitments, please don't shy away. Yes. Okay, so there are a couple of questions, and I would request Dr. Anamika and Arun to take these questions. I may need to switch my device, so I'll just log off and log in again. So just give me like 2 minutes.
Sure. So maybe what we can do, Dr. Anamika, I can take the first question from Madhuri here while Meenu is coming back on from the other device. So work from home culture and hybrid working gives workforce freedom to work on two opportunities simultaneously. What are the challenges and overcoming to retain talent in the pandemic? So, Dr. Anamika, do you want me to give a shot at this?
Please go ahead.
Okay. So I think Madhuri, moonlighting is something that people can do, whether or not they have a remote working, people can come to office and then continue to, do some other work in the night. So we can't really control that. But what companies are increasingly doing now is moving to outcome based management. So nobody's clocking hours anymore to say, hey, are you logging in at 9 o'clock? Are you logging out at 5 o'clock? But what companies are increasingly doing in the face of work from home is to say that here are three things that you need to be doing or you need to get done by this date. If that doesn't come through, then there are implications. So companies are also smart to say, we don't want to police you and see if you're contributing time. We rather, evaluate you based on outcomes, and then your performance gets measured by the contributions you make. So that's the way of managing the first part of your question, hopefully. The second part is definitely retaining talent is always a holy grail. I wish there was one answer that I could have given to you to say, do this and then you'll be able to retain talent. In my mind, it's always a combination, and we don't know what works for whom, because you can give some people money, some others you can give training and development, some others you can give growth, but every person will have a different need. Like, I unfortunately don't have one answer here, but what I can say, and maybe I told this a little earlier, is if your company is truly able to take care of your employees in times like these, the hygiene factors, or the very bottom of the Maslow's pyramid, which is safety, security, come into play. And if companies are not able to support employees for that, then everything else is superfluous. So company like Tata, in my mind, will always continue to attract and retain talent for what they're doing through this crisis, not just for employees who are working for Tata, but for Indians, on the whole. But some other companies which are taking a myopic view, probably asking people to go out in the field, risk their lives, might also get treated, the same kind of treatment from their employees when the times are good. So taking care of your people, making sure that you give them the opportunity to grow in the company are all important things that might help. But beyond that, obviously, you can do multiple other things as well. Maybe you start putting in innovative retention practices, you give retention bonus, or you create meaningful work where provide them growth. There are many strategies that one can possibly think of. I hope that answers your question, Madhuri. uh, I think the process of entering into government sector, Anamika ma'am has already answered that question, so maybe you've got your response there. What are the entry level posts in HR for which freshers are recruited and the packages offered? Dr. Anamika, would you like to give a shot at this? I think some part you already covered earlier,
Yeah,
but
I
to
think
respond to
entry
this.
level, by and large, recruitment, HR generalist, that is the profile that people get. In terms of salary range that you are asking, I've seen people starting from 2 after MBA, 2 lakhs per annum, and 25 lakhs per annum at the entry level itself. So the entire thing is, what is it that you can bring on the table? As a fresher, I've seen people get into L&D profile. We always say that for L&D profile, a little experience is usually desirable, but we've seen people get into L&D profile as there is no pattern. I've seen absolutely different, unique designs or jobs being created for different people. So it depends entirely on what you are able to convince at the interview table that you can bring on the table. And that will also decide your salary. That's my understanding of this whole thing. Uh, on the previous point, Arun, that you were talking about, how do you retain people? I think social setup and culture that you provide, that is now going to be a very important glue for people to stick or leave an organization.
I, I completely agree. And maybe I can just add one line, Dr. Anamika. Social is the new, currency for the young millennials. So, and I was, when you said that, this instantly came to my mind. We were hiring a young lady in Thailand, and I was doing an interview, to say, hey, so what are things that you are looking at from this company? And she said, look, three of the people that I am following on Facebook keep posting good pictures all the time about what's happening about this company, and that's what attracts me. And that insight kind of made a very nice learning for me to say, how are we influencing these things? Because ultimately this is true voice of associate, right? If they are going out posting pictures on Facebook, so social is a very, very important part of today's equation. How do you manage that also plays a big role in retaining your employees. So I don't mean social media alone, that's where you can make things happen. But when I say social, it's really about the communities, the collaboration, the experience of doing something meaningful along with a group of people. So
Yeah.
we've got a few more questions here. I don't know if Minu's back. Maybe we'll try to answer the next one. Dr. Namika, nowadays everything goes machinery and robotics, which reduces the human burden. Whether this affects the HR professional. Dr. Namika, would you like to take a shot? Should I try? Try.
Let me
my
take a
adult is,
shot and then maybe you add.
please.
Things like robotics, AI, etc., are definitely coming in. Everything where machine can replace human being is being replaced. But let me share a small example or story. There is this famous experiment by IBM Watson, which is being floating around on WhatsApp and social media, where the Watson is trained to play a quiz where there is no previous heuristics. It's random and you dynamically choose area in which you want to quiz. And time and time again, Watson wins. The only difference is after winning, Watson doesn't feel the happiness, but when human beings win it, there is happiness. So the main distinguishing line here would be how much emotions, empathy, compassion, etc. can you, or strategic thinking that, or unique thinking, problem solving that you can bring in. Robotics will only operate from what has been learned. The double loop of learning or double loop of solutioning that is available, that's uniquely available to human beings. So that is where the impact would be. Over to you, Arun. Please do correct, add. I'm not sure if I answered enough.
So, ma'am, I also intend to become a teacher, and I cannot correct a fellow teacher. But I think great insights, ma'am. I fully agree with you. And in today's world, uh, I was, seeing again a photo on WhatsApp or LinkedIn. I can't remember, but it was saying that artificial intelligence. Are you concerned about artificial intelligence increasing? And the other person responds, no. But I'm concerned about real intelligence going down, because human beings today are somehow missing the obvious. Vivek is a very, very important part of our life. If we as individuals cannot use our brain, to make the right decisions, data can only do so much. So while I see that some roles which can be automated might go down, there are other roles that will get created, because human beings are gifted in a way which machines are not, and that gift can possibly not be replicated in the near term. I don't know what the future holds, but current technologies, at least the next 10-15 years, unless there's some very radical black swan event, things don't look like changing a lot. So like jobs that can be automated might still be done by machines or robots, but human beings will still continue to do other roles which will help us to create that impact. For HR professionals, at least for the next 10-15 years, I do feel that we still have a bright future, because there will be more and more need for people to be taken care of, because everything else probably is taken care of by machines and robots. But human beings, like if you see in COVID today, it a robot speaking to a person who's ill, or a robot speaking to a person who's alone, is not going to help, but a person speaking to that other person makes all that impact. Maybe, and again, I just want to be on the agenda, but tell this story, which is by the person who wrote the book Man's Search for Purpose. Yeah, I don't know, somehow I miss his name, but he's a German Nazi person, who was saved, and then he kind of wrote this book. Dr. Anamika, do you have the name in mind? Like, somehow just have a
I,
blank out
I
moment.
know the book. It's about the concentration camp, and he starts by saying
Concentration,
that small concentration camp is what I'm talking about. It may not be a general.
exactly.
Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl. Yes, yes. So this is an anecdote about Viktor Frankl, where he spoke to a lady for 3 hours, and he felt that he convinced this lady not to commit suicide. The lady spoke to him for 3 hours. She kept the phone. At a future date, she never met the lady. At a future date, they met in some social setting. So Viktor Frankl asked that, hey, we spoke for 3 hours. What's the question that, what's the advice that I gave that helped you to, kind of, or helped you to decide against committing the suicide? And the lady said, nothing much, nothing much that you said applied to me. He said, okay, so why did you then not commit suicide? She said, the fact that somebody was willing to listen to me for 3 hours is what, made me change my decision. And sometimes it's just about that. So human beings have that special role. I don't think that can be ever taken away. So like what Dr. Namika said, I'm in complete agreement. We will have new roles coming in. Some roles might go out, but some others might come. We have to be riding that wave, be in the front instead of trailing, which will probably make us irrelevant. If you keep learning, unlearning all the time, and relearning as well, you should be able to be ahead of the game. Chetna, I hope your question has been answered by Minu, and Minu is back. So I will probably hand the baton to Meenu again to moderate the rest of the.
If I just take a half a minute, slightly digressing, but Arun, just adding to that point,
Yes.
we did a research here recently where we compared these automated counseling sessions where you have the robotics, which gives you the first line of this thing. So we hear you, we understand that there is pain in your life. You will be addressed to. So emergency SOS depressive cases are routed to technology-enabled chat box and speech machines, and then later on they are anchored to the counselors. Telecounseling and face-to-face counseling. And what we found was that face-to-face counseling can never be replaced. Simple thing like resonating breath or the pulse or the body heat or the expressions that you exchange, that could not be replicated through machines. So those areas where human touch is required, that will always be required. So it was a very case controlled kind of study that we did, and that was the result that we found that while there is trend towards avatar based this thing, robotics as pets and robots as counselors, but they will never be able to replace what a warm friendship or a warm, loving, caring relationship can do for you. Or a counselor who is face to face, resonating with you on your body language and with your breath, that can never be replaced. Sorry, I took a little hijack there.
Oh, and that was such a beautiful insight. Such a beautiful insight. Thank you so much for sharing that. Right. So yeah, in the interest of time, since we have 5 more minutes, I just want to wrap up. Having said that, it's not that you can't write to us. So I'll just drop in our email ID. Please feel free to write. And if you have any other questions that are not answered here, we'll be very happy to answer. What we just wanted to kind of, suggest, advise, whichever ways, is that, look at this from a 40-year career perspective. It's not about saying that once I get placed or once I start my career, life is all sorted. I think the real challenges and the real decisions will come in once you start. I think I lost the other connection. So yeah. So next, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. So assume that you have 40 years of career in front of you, and you have these amazing 9 months ahead of you again to kind of learn, to kind of build perspectives, to kind of gain experiences. What would you do differently so that you're prepared for those 40 years? I completely get it. I completely understand that placements are important, but like I said, the real life actually begins after your placements are done, and therefore I think there are a few things which we wanted to. It was actually on the slide, but unfortunately the connection on the other device went away. So one thing which I keep telling everybody is please work on your basics. How are you communicating? How are you writing emails? It's not about English. We're not saying you have to have like a flowery language or a flawless language. It's all about your communication. What are you really communicating? How are you really communicating? And that's something which I believe every HR professional, or for that matter, every professional needs to have a very good grip on. So start from there. And then I saw a lot of questions saying that what if I don't get good summer internship? Do second summers. If you don't get a good summer internship, do a project. You'll be saving a lot of time this year by not commuting. So use the time to do something else, write a research paper, read books, read books or all the resources which Arun shared with you, go deeper into those resources, make your own hypothesis, make your own build your own perspectives on those resources, write about those, use social media to connect with people, read. There's so much available to you. You know, you're fortunate that you have so many resources. You have internet in front of you. You have your professors, and you know, you have your mentors with you. So do that. And if possible, you know, if you want to do a good certification, go for a certification. And when you're doing a certification, look for how is it going to help you in your career, not to say that, okay, it's going to add an extra line on my CV. uh, go for what's helping. You know, what skills are you building up? And you know, as far as if somebody asks, you know, what kind of books do we use, I think go online. There are enough resources available. Start with, you know, basics like, you know, CIPD, like the CIPD, structure and talent acquisition. Start from there, read it online, and I'm sure you'll be able to build up the right perspectives. So with that, thank you, Dr. Anamika. Thank you, Arun, for being with us here. Your inputs, insights actually helped me build my own perspectives. And also, I'm sure the students would have tons to take back. So thanks a bunch.